Hello everybody, and welcome to this PMI Dynamic webinar. Today's topic is the 9-9 synergy. My name is Jessica Wydurko, and I am the PMI webinar moderator today. A few housekeeping things before we begin. All attendees are muted out of respect for the presenter, so only myself and the presenter will be able to speak today. Questions can be emailed to the presenter afterwards. We are not going to be doing a Q&A session after this presentation. But you can feel free to email any questions to the presenter. We'll post his email at the end. And the webinar is being recorded for future viewing, and it will be posted on the PMI Dynamic website at the URL shown on your screen. And the webinar slides will also be available for download at that link. The featured rope today is the PMI Dynamic 9-9 Synergy. It is 9.9 millimeters and comes in two different lengths, 60 meters and 70 meters. In honor of this webinar, the rope has been discounted, and it is 30% off, and it is discounted through September 25th. It is USA made, certified UIAA 101 and EN 892. Here is a little bit of the more specifications. And our presenter today is Truc Allen. He is a PMI vertical specialist. So without further ado, I will give it over to Truc.
Okay, all right. Thanks, Jess. Great. All right, so welcome to my presentation, Behind the Lens, a Photographer's Take by me, Truc Allen. My presentation today will highlight my work with PMI over the last couple years, including my use of the Synergy 9-9 over the last several months. I'll also tell what I hope is an interesting story with a slightly different perspective. So without further ado, let's start the show. I live in Seattle, Washington, and in addition to my photography business, I'm currently the marketing director for Vertical World Climbing Gyms, board member for the Washington Climbers Coalition, and the Cascade Section Chair for the American Alpine Club. I moved up here in 2008 and have just been constantly amazed at how the Pacific Northwest lends itself to so much diversity in culture and the geography. Before I moved up here, though, I only thought of three words when Washington State was mentioned, and that is rain and far away. Here's one of my shots from a few years back. This is the classic scene of the Pike Place public market there. It's the biggest, probably the biggest tourist attraction other than the Space Needle. And it's raining, and I think it captures the essence, you know. Let's see, we've got the public market, Pike Place, and then of course you've got your grumpy people. And I think this next shot pretty much sums up the weather between the months of October through, well, summer doesn't officially start here until July, so pretty much through June. This past year has been a little different with El Nino and it being a warmer season. It's been a great climbing season, actually. Terrible ski season. But for the most part, I think Seattle's a great city. The culture alone is pretty outstanding. Traffic, not so much. It's getting worse every year. Weather in the summer usually averages around 85 degrees, and we rarely get snow here in the city anyway. We've got some great street performers, lots of talent there. And this is just an hour away. We have world-class bouldering at Gold Bar. And also in Leavenworth, which is just 2 hours away, probably one of my favorite places to boulder, and just a really cool town. And I'm going to cover some of the climbing there as well. In addition, the Northwest is renowned for its backcountry and ski mountaineering. This is just an hour away, and you can see in the back is Rainier. And there's Mount Rainier in all of its glory. And, just kind of goofing around up there. Here's your chance to pose up on Muir Field, heading up to the Muir Camp on the way up to the summit. And then once you climbed up to the top, you get a massive ski descent down. You just can't beat that view. We get about 400 inches of snow a year, so it's pretty good. And occasionally we get really nice powder. Otherwise, it's pretty much known as the Pacific Northwest cement. It's kind of like mashed potatoes. And we also have good ice, albeit a short season, being like 4 weeks or so, where it's just perfect. And so my life before Seattle in the Northwest and the United States. This is where I think my story really begins, and kind of where I think the show is a little unique in its perspective. So I was born in Saigon in 1974, now known as Ho Chi Minh City. And pre-1974, Vietnam is peaceful, pretty, and you've got a lot of smiling people. And then on April 30th, 1975, just a few months after I was born, Saigon fell to the northern Vietnamese. And these are some of the famous photos from that time. Here's the northern Vietnamese tanks taking over the presidential palace. And on that same day, here are people fighting to climb over the walls of the U.S. Embassy. And here's another famous photo. The American CIA personnel are getting evacuated. And on that same day, the North corralled all the military and ultimately separated all the men from the women and children and placed everyone in concentration or re-education camps. And this is where I spent a little bit of time. And I often remember the story my brother would tell me about our times in the camp. He would tell me about how each day the guards would pull him out of the cell and basically put him through a beating session, they would call it, until he was pretty much lying on the ground. And once they left, I was pretty small at the time, so I was able to climb between the bars, run over to him and check if he's okay, give him some water or maybe a piece of bread, and then run back in the cage, run back between the bars without getting caught. But it's just something that it's always an interesting thing to think about. In 1976, my mother and I escaped the camp with her having to leave her 3 children, my older brothers and sister. We escaped in a boat to flee over 400 miles to Malaysia. And it was a boat pretty much like this and pretty much this full. So we were on this boat with marginal amounts of food and water, and for 7 days and 7 nights. And when we finally saw land, everybody in the boat ran to one side and capsized it. And my mother was down in the cabin with me, and her only option was to push me through one of the portholes amidst the chaos. So she would hope that I wouldn't drown if she couldn't get out. So she got onto the shore, and she didn't have me, and she sat there for she claims like the longest minutes she's ever had, and I just walked up to her, and apparently the captain had saved me. So just another amazing story, another one of those amazing stories that my mother tells me. So we landed in Malaysia, and we were in these refugee camps. This one is in Bidong refugee camp in Malaysia. You can see how full they are. And here I am with my mother. And here we are again, and that's my the wife, I guess my sister-in-law. And here we are again. We spent some time there. My mother was able to actually start a little coffee shop, and she was able to raise enough money to get us out of there and to come to the United States. And this is where we lived, where I grew up in Roanoke, Virginia, about 3 hours from the New River Gorge, well, under 3 hours. I lived in the town for a while, and then I went to school in Arizona, and I moved back here, and I lived closer to the New River Gorge so I could be climbing more, and we developed a few of the new areas out there, and just there was just so much to be done. And till this day, there's still just new climbs and new bouldering areas going up, which is pretty cool. Here's another picture of us, my mom getting her degree. We were pretty stoked. This is when we were living in government housing. Eventually, we got out of there, and we'll just fast forward to 1995. Yep, this is me. Climbing in Arizona. I'd been climbing for about 5 years at this point, moonlighting between Arizona for school and back east in the summers, where I'd work at a place called Wilderness Adventure at Eagle Landing, which is this place here. They operate as an outdoor adventure center year-round, and also runs an outward bound type camp program during the summers. I started off as a group leader there, and after 5 years took the position as the director of activities for another 5 years. And this is where most of my education and high-angle work and rigging was developed. I worked and designed high and low ropes courses, including this 1,000-foot zip line, which at the time was the longest in the world, and a few other elements, including this cargo net, double strand, the pole jump, and the climbing wall here. This picture of them doing some additional work to it. And then we've got the swaying bridge. Just a few of the elements that I was responsible for developing and maintaining. I want to also thank Wilderness Adventure at Eagle Landing for the photos, by the way, and the other photos from Vietnam. Those were, a lot of those came off of the, like the Wikipedia pages and just Associated Press. It's amazing when you realize how the digital revolution for masses wasn't that long ago. I couldn't find very many photos of myself during my 20s. I think I spent most of those years traveling to climb in whitewater kayak, now that I think about it. I don't even think I knew too many people with cameras during those years. Oops. Wrong button there. We'll just kind of go through these again real quick. So one of the focuses that I'm going to do for my presentation is also a climbing tour of the Northwest and beyond. Most of it will be kind of cruising through a few of my images that I've taken over the last 2 years, I guess coming up on 3 years now of climbing. And hopefully by the end of this presentation you'll know a bit about the climbing around here. So gear, I wanted to first talk about my photo gear. Nothing too crazy. This is kind of what I ideally take with me, but most of the time, just to save weight, I minimalize a lot. I use Canon, And you see a 1635, a 2470, and a 7200 lens, as well as a Mark II and a Mark III 5D camera. Really like the 5D. It takes a ton of abuse and just keeps on clicking. And for the last several months, I've been climbing on the Synergy, and it's been an amazing line. Kind of see through those. Another one is the new Erratic 8.9, another line that I've been super stoked about. It's so thin, and it's great for, well, depending on if you want to take it out on the Alpine, but it's just super light. And then I've been using the 9mm Escape static line, not as much as I would like. What I really like about the PMI ropes is that as a photographer, I can lead on it, get to the anchors, I can set my anchor, wrap down, get my camera gear all set up, and then jug up the ropes. So even though they're dynamic lines, I'm still able to, it requires a little more work, I'm still able to really just push the use of the ropes. And after doing this again for the better half of 5 months now, the Synergy, as well as the Spire and the Wall, all of the sheaths are still intact and still supple as ever. So with that in mind, I do tend to only take one rope for everything. And other times I'll take another rope to get the shots of people climbing on them. And here's the Spire 9.2. And with all my stuff, just for my everyday normal sport cragging, no cams, Lodestar Metolius quarter dome pack. So that is just for one sport climbing photo shoot. And so as the picture says, let's start the tour. We'll start off with the North Bend areas, exit 32. You can see it's off of Highway 90, and it's just about it's about an hour from downtown Seattle, or less. This is exit 38. I'm sorry, did I say 32? This is 38, and this is called the Nevermind Crag, and that's my buddy Curtis climbing me. The Nevermind wall is definitely probably the best wall at the whole crag, and he's climbing on the Spire there. This climb is a 12C, and the rock in this picture looks really good. But the majority of the crag, as far as all of 38 goes, it's a bit interesting and something to get used to when you first come out there. There's definitely more solid crags around, but as you can see, it's not like super chossy or anything where you got to have a helmet or anything. Here's Natalie climbing on the same wall. She's on the Synergy on this one. This day we actually put the Synergy through a bunch of work. We led a bunch of routes on it, took a bunch of whippers on it, and my friend Scott, who's belaying, he's been developing and replacing a lot of the bolts. So I told him about the ropes, and I wanted him to just use it as much as he could. So he was jugging on it, leading on it, hanging on it, bolting with it, and then if you do any developing, you know that occasionally you set up some pretty bad angles on the rope, and especially if you have to get to some bad anchors, occasionally can involve some traversing and just really good grounds for testing the durability of a rope. And here is my friend Feeney. She is also climbing at 38. And then moving forward, this is Kirk climbing a 12C, also at 38. And this is where people are surprised at 38 because most of the pictures you see, there's nothing, you couldn't imagine anything this steep on there. But he is climbing on the wall rope, which I believe is a 10-2, 10-6, I'm sorry. And again, we sessioned this wall with that rope and did a bunch of climbs with it. And I'm not the only one that thinks this. There's a friend of mine, Dave Havik, who used to rep PMI ropes, and when he heard I was climbing on them, he was super ecstatic about it, and kind of wish we had more of the lines out here in the Northwest. And here's Teal climbing on the spire, which is a 10-2 in the Grasshopper, and she is climbing a 11, like the steepest 11A I think ever. It's pretty cool. This picture was also featured in Rock and Ice a couple of years ago. Moving on, we're going to Little Sigh, also known as Exit 32, and this is pretty much just 6 miles down the road and across the street. I used a few different ropes with Sean Bailey here. He's climbing on a 14 BC called it's called Horrors of Babylon, but that was a great day of shooting with him, and we had him climbing on the spire, and I had him climbing on the Synergy. I didn't bring the erratic. I didn't want to bring too many ropes that day because I do dislike that hike, even though it's not that far. Carrying all that gear is a pain. And here he is again climbing Californication, which is a 13A, and he was taking some really good whippers on that day and really putting it through the test. I mean, the guy weighs like 130 pounds wet, so he had to take extra big whippers for me just to get the sense of feel for it. He would climb the route, climb to the crux, pause on a slope or two-finger quote-unquote rest, and then look at me and ask, how was that? I'd be like, I think it was all right. And then he would just let go and take the 25-foot whipper and then just walk the crux again. Quite an amazing climber. He's competing at the Worlds in Arco right now as we speak. Actually, I think he is done with it, but he's still climbing in Europe. Okay, so the next climb, we've got a lot of climbs to cover, so I'm only putting in like up to anywhere from 2 to 6 photos per area. So the Tooth, as you can see, we're still in the Snoqualmie Pass area. We're still within an hour's drive of Seattle. Lots of cool stuff. The Tooth is one of my favorite Dawn Patrol climbs. There it is at the peak there. You actually climb the face that's around the left arête, but the approach is a beautiful approach, and this is mid-spring, and I believe this is around 7 in the morning. That's my friend Roger Strong, and an amazing Arc'teryx athlete, and we just pretty much ran this car to car in just a little over 3 hours. It was pretty amazing. And here he is climbing, and he usually solos this, but I asked him to climb on the rope and get it up there. Of course, it's I can't remember now. It's either 3 or 4 pitches of 5, 7, so pretty casual, but definitely a very, very, very cool climb. nice approach. This is my friend Graham Zimmerman, and also of the famous Graham Zimmerman. He and I are doing another dawn patrol here, and this is standing at the summit at sunrise. And you can see it's kind of later in the season, snow's gone. But the walk back, I mean, the walk there and back is just so amazing. Like, you would not believe that this was just an hour away from Seattle. Just super cool. All right, moving into Index, and you can see it's up on Highway 2 instead of 90. Index is an amazing place, lots of rich history, and also infamous for its sandbagging. If you can climb at Index, you can pretty much climb anywhere. The story goes that the guys who were developing Index back in the day figured that they were nowhere near as good as the people out there that were developing during that time, so they rated everything much lower than they were actually climbing because they just didn't think they were that good. But in reality, this place is known as where quote-unquote real climbers go. And there's one of my favorite shots anyway, and for the life of me I just drew a blank on the name of it. I shot this about 3 years ago, and in the background is Mount Index, which I believe I have one picture of us on it later. Here's Sean Bailey again on one of the classic climbs, Godzilla, and that climb is a very favorite warm-up for many. 5'9", but if you're a solid 5'10" trad climber, then you know it'll be good. I can't comment about how Index just makes you super strong. And here is Andrew Magnuson, recently climbing on apologies to Walter B, which I believe is an 11BC. I'll have to look that up. So many routes going through my head here, but this one also made it into climbing last year, and it's quite a spectacular climb. And here's Christy climbing a very, very super classic 10C, and she is climbing on the Synergy there. Just, I mean, this is one of my favorite climbs of all time, just an instant classic, and also a climb with a lot of controversy. Here's Jeremy climbing on the upper section of Apologies. Definitely not a gimme. And then I went out and took a photo of Sean Bailey just about a month and a half ago on the Synergy. He's climbing the Japanese Gardens, which is hard 11B, I believe. Definitely one of the more challenging climbs out there at that grade, and very classic. This climb shuts down so many people, and he's actually at the crux right now. And many people take huge whippers. He actually took a 30-foot whipper off of it, but very, very cool climb. Moving into Mount Garfield, west face, home of Infinite Bliss, which is 23 pitches, and it is the longest quote-unquote sport route in the United States. And I believe this is pitch 12, or it might be pitch 16, but the spire went up with us on that one. We took 2 ropes, and just a beautiful, magnificent climb for the first 18 pitches, and then things get a little challenging and a little more alpine-esque, where you're climbing full pitches without any gear, pulling on very loose rocks and having to navigate, and actually, you know, using bushes as anchors on, I believe, pitch 16 or might be 18. You have to rappel. You have to rappel off a bush, so pretty hairy. All right, I guess, oh, my other picture didn't show up. Anyway, moving on, there's a new area up, and you can see we've moved up from Highway 90. We've gone up to 2, as we did with Index, and now we're going a little more east to Money Creek area, and this area has been getting lots of development lately, and here's Binjit walking along the way, the approach, very, very amazing area. Nobody's out there yet. It's still in development, so here's one of the warm-ups. There's only 511 climbs to warm up on, and then it just goes straight up from there. And I climbed on a Synergy all day that day, as well as my buddy Binjit and my other buddy Marshall. We went up there, and it was amazing. I mean, I guess you can't see it there, but on the way up, I was the last guy because I had all of the gear and carrying all my camera stuff, and of course the full haul bag. And we take a stop, and we're resting, and then all of a sudden Binjit just yells, bees, and you know, it takes me a second to process, and we're standing at the top of the approach, and I'm so beat, but and I've got like a 40-pound pack, and I just started getting stung. So there was a hornet's nest that we were standing right next to, and I took 6 yellow jacket stings, trying to run with this pack of all my gear uphill, and I'm the last person, so the last person always kind of gets screwed there. But fortunately, I didn't have any reaction, and but it's kind of like the gateway to get to this crag. It's so amazing. It's definitely the steepest granite jug hauling and just amazing granite that I've climbed on in Washington. And here's the more vertical climbs in the area. Definitely just amazing, bulletproof, super hard, just bulletproof rock. This is the other one of the other 11s. And here's Binjit climbing on the other 11. So you can kind of see on the left of him there's the arete, and that was the roof. The big triangular roof was the one that I was climbing with the pictures, and that one goes up through 3 roofs. So pretty cool, pretty amazing to be an 11. You look at that and you're like, there's just no way, but it definitely is just super classic. Moving further east along Highway 2, we hit Nason Ridge, and it's kind of getting close to Leavenworth, but just not quite. Just another amazing area. Really steep approach, but not very far. And the climbing is just bomber. Good rock, and lends itself to lots of really steep climbing. You can see here Mike's leading, I believe, a 12A. Maybe, no, I'm sorry. No, this is like, at the time, I think he was working on the second ascent, and it might be 12C. I believe this is a Chris Henson original, but a very, very cool wall. And here's Blue, attempting another 11 out of the main steep side of the wall. And Brian, this is a 12A at Nason. Definitely, this whole wall is super cool. Just taking big falls on, clean falls on steep climbs, big holds, and a great place to test a rope. And here I am jugging up the lines, and you can just see how steep it is at the anchors. I'm pretty far out of the wall, but you know, again, I'm jugging like 70 feet on a dynamic line, and yeah, it is more work, but at the same time, I'd rather suffer doing that for one jug than hauling up a whole nother rope. Moving into Leavenworth, we've got the drip wall, which is an amazing wall, as you can see here. Just absolutely amazing. And here we are moving into Icicle Creek. So now we've actually gone through Leavenworth, which is just, if I were to be able to live somewhere in Washington as a climber town, it would be Leavenworth. Super, super rad place. So we went to the Pearly Gates Wall this day, and I was hanging out with John Sherman, and surprise, he's not bouldering, but he is definitely pretty surprising. Like, I didn't know that he was so big into trad climbing and ropes, but he loved Washington. We had a great week hanging out, and I was hosting a show that he was doing, and he's climbing on the erratic here, and just really great guy. It was really cool to meet one of my icons. And he's a pretty funny guy. Here he is practicing his French blow. And you can see behind him in the valley there on the other side is Icicle Creek Road, which is basically service to just so much rock. And there he is, being funny again while I'm coiling up the erratic. And the cool thing about the icicle as well is, if you've ever heard of the enchantments, there's goats up there, and this guy kind of followed me around, and just me, and I just left my stuff over on the other side of the crag, and he just kind of followed me, and so I kind of ran away. Unfortunately, he didn't come after me, but he just stared at me for a while. And I didn't post the other picture of John Sherman getting the stare down from the goat while he was belaying, so he didn't have any room to run. But it was definitely an entertaining, albeit slightly tenuous moment. So now we've gone a little bit more north, and now we're on Highway 20. And going into the North Cascades National Park to climb at New Halem. And New Halem is a very unique area, just amazing, very solid rock with very solid climbs and some of the best concentration of harder routes a climber could ask for. And the access, you probably couldn't ask for better. It's pretty much like 80 feet off the road, maybe 100 feet off the road, but definitely cool. And this is my friend David climbing with the grasshopper, the Spire, and he is climbing, I believe, a 12C. And this is Kenesha climbing a hard 11. I just kind of was just hanging out in the woods, resting. This is a great little area. They actually brought their kids to this trip, to this crag a lot. We'd be the only ones there, which was super cool, but also it was just a cool place to bring your kids, because even though it was the proximity to the road, it had little flat areas that you could hang out in, and it just provided a really cool atmosphere. So I snagged a shot of her. And here's a different view of the wall. She is working on a 12B. She's probably sent it by now, but Kenesha is an amazing climber. You'll see her in a couple other photos here. Now we're going into the Cascades National Park proper, where a group of friends and I did the Forbidden Peak climb from the East Ridge to the West Ridge. Definitely a very, 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 very cool climb. Our first intent was to try to climb the Becky route up the middle face, and due to technical difficulties on my behalf, we opted for the slightly less committing, and I say slightly in a alpine tone. As you can see here, there's definitely a commitment factor to it. You're, a couple thousand feet up, and there's these big table-sized rocks that are just nestled in the right place. But I don't even know if you'd have to try too hard, but you could definitely pull these things off and probably end up going with it. But you can see the erratic getting used there. And it's a pretty big traverse with some good climbing. Very amazing. And here we are looking down to the West Ridge, which is just stunning. You can see the moraine down on the right there. So continuing on through the Cascades National Park is MAZAMA. And what I didn't show in this is all of the amazing, the roadside alpine. I believe Rock and Ice even featured a pretty big story on it. But absolutely amazing. I mean, if you aspire to climb in the alpine or climb big walls or anything like that, Washington is not a bad place to live. And here we are in MAZAMA, and unfortunately right now this place is on fire. I don't know if this crag is actually on fire, but there's definitely some evacuations going on, unfortunately. This is the Prospector Wall, and Marshall is climbing there. He is on the quintessential cover to the guidebook there. I believe that's the 11. It's either a hard 10 or an 11. I'm sorry, I'm not being very accurate with the grades here. But we spent a lot of time climbing on these PMI ropes, and till this day, I mean, just even over the last couple of years of just putting them through the ringer, I definitely am super stoked to be climbing on them. So moving out of Washington, going down the Smith. It's still part of the Northwest, so I figured I'd include it. Crazy 5 o'clock rush hour traffic on the 5-gallon bucket wall. And this climb is absolutely fantastic. Blue Light Special, I believe is what it's called. And this picture was featured in climbing early last year as well. Some silly antics from the American Alpine Club Kragan Classic at Smith Rock. This was around Halloween, and I just couldn't pass up posting these photos. Here's Brian climbing chain reaction, super classic photography route. I'm not sure the climbing is all that classic in my opinion. It's actually pretty weird. I couldn't find myself to like it, but a super stunning angle to shoot, and just a striking line. We definitely took lots of falls and had a lot of fun on the erratic there. Smith Rock in all its glory. So Mount Index, I put this one kind of towards the end because we ended up not actually climbing it because it was just hairy, scary, sketchy, and we were up there to do other shoots, there is just an amazing amount of rock up there. Unfortunately, it's just not that solid. There's, I believe, Chenard and Fred Becky did a route up there, did the first ascent, but it is not by these walls you see here. From what I've read in the books, there's actually like you have to do some vegetation climbing on their line. But our main goal was to check out this new line that was getting bolted up that center line that you see there, and just check it out. Unfortunately, it was just not a good day to do it. Now moving into straight north to Horn Lake, which is absolutely an amazing place. Just some of the best limestone on this side of the, I guess in the Northwest. Really steep, amazing climbing. When we were there, it wasn't too crowded, and just absolutely fantastic climbing. You wouldn't even know that this was in North America. Looks like something out of France or Spain. This is Leah climbing, I believe, a 10C. Pretty fun climb. Starts off super steep where you kind of have to climb through those curtains, and then it's just a technical stem on your classic limestone features. Now moving into Squamish and other areas around there. This is Brian climbing on the spire, and Kenesha on the wall rope, and my friend Pablo, who is actually the Ecuadorian sport climbing champion for his country. It was kind of cool hanging out with him up there. Worked with him down here in Ballard for, I believe he worked with us for a year and a half. Now he's off moving to Germany. Here's Pablo again. And this is Cheakamus area. Definitely a very well-known, popular crag. Some PMI product photography. And I figured I'd take us far off to near my home, the Red River Gorge. This is an annual trip that our friends do. Definitely just so worth it. And I put Arizona in here because I kind of feel like it's an interesting story. In December of 2011, my best friend died, passed away, and what he left was a legacy for us to kind of follow in his footsteps to do the birthday challenge, which is climb as many routes as we can. Or, I'm sorry, not as many as we can, but as many routes as we are old. So this particular year I turned 40, so I had to do 40 routes that day, and you know, I had been coming off an injury from fall of 2011 that left me pretty much with 3 years of injury, chronic pain, instability, and rehab, with 16 months of no climbing. So I kind of had a pretty big roller coaster there, and between my friend passing away and my shoulder problem, you know, it was definitely a very it was a very meaningful and emotional challenge for me, actually. It was about 90 degrees too. It was an abnormally warm summer, or I'm sorry, October. Here I am on top of my 40th climb, just really psyched to have finished it, and of course trailing along the PMI and drinking one for the brother. He always loved tequila. So there you have it. Thanks so much to PMI for supplying the ropes and uh, keeping me safe, and definitely been a pleasure. If you have any questions, feel free to contact me via my email down there, and hope to see you out on the crag. I think that's it, Jess. Jess?
All right, sorry about that. Thank you very much, Truc. We appreciate that. And let me just switch it back to my screen really quickly here. Apologize for the delay. Give me a second. Well, guys, I'm having technical difficulties.
No worries.
Okay. Should be able to see my screen here pretty quickly. And like Truc said, you can email any questions you have to him at his email shown there on the screen. recording of this webinar along with the slides will be available soon, and I apologize I didn't put the link in there. The link is PMI Dynamic rope. I'm sorry, PMIDynamic.com, and then you can navigate through there to find the webinars. And remember that all the 99 Synergy ropes are 30% off until September 25th, and you can find them at pmidynamic.com/products/99-synergy, or you can call our customer service department, and that is how you will be able to get your 30% off through September 25th. For news and updates, you can follow PMI on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And we'll be posting information about any future webinars we're doing, and also just information about PMI and PMI Dynamic. Excuse me. And we really appreciate you listening, and we hope that it was helpful and entertaining, and we really appreciate you doing this, True. It was very wonderful.
Thanks. It's definitely my pleasure.
All right, everyone have a great day, and we'll see you at the next one.